And looks like we're live. Welcome. Welcome to Spirit Week. I'm Jen Langdon and one of the challenge devs at Cyber Skyline. I'll be hosting you tonight as we mark the beginning of the end of this NCL Spring season. So while we wait for some people to join, why don't you share a comment of your favorite challenge from the season, or maybe even something positive that happened or something you learned from the season's games. While you do that, let me introduce my fellow presenters here tonight for this event. We have Franz Pear. Say hello, Franz.
Hello, hello.
And Kiwi Issa.
Hello, hello.
And they'll be walking through some of their challenges here with you guys. We're super excited to be here, and we're going to kick off Spirit Week by going over a few challenges from the spring 2025 season tonight, like right now-ish. Challenges you love, challenges you loathe. And we're going to start with individual games, some individual game challenges. We'll get into team game, and we're going to rotate who's presenting. If you have a challenge, maybe you were dying for us to go over, feel free to add that in the chat. If you have questions while we're presenting, you're welcome to also put them, leave a comment. We might not be able to get them while we're answering, but we'll try and get to those questions. We will have a time at the end where we can answer any of your questions. I know we have a limited amount of time. It's only an hour, and there are so many challenges, so we won't be able to go through all of the challenges tonight. And speaking of tonight, tonight's the first night of Spirit Week, but we have some other days for Spirit Week going on. Tomorrow we have a soft skills talk going on. Wednesday is kind of how to stand out. So if you're looking to apply for a job, get your score report out there and see how you can use that. We'll have a chat with the game creators. We'll be back here again Thursday night, 7 p.m. And then Friday is the award ceremony. So be sure to show up and see who our stars are from the season then. We have a registration link. I'm sure maybe you received some emails, but we have ways that you can register and come join our other talks. So without further ado, let's kind of get down to it, shall we? We have a couple of favorites. So some people want to see E&E. I think, Franz, you're doing some of that right now, right?
Yeah, I know there was a lot of people who were asking about the hard enumeration exploitation challenge from individual game. So do you want me to jump through and show everyone how that worked?
Let's get started.
All right. So let me do a screen share here. This was an interesting challenge. I will say this is probably like the most interesting challenge I've created before. The premise behind this challenge is that you had to take advantage of the way that permission checks on file descriptors work. So you were provided this terminal, and in the prompt, you're being told that you need to find a way to gain root access, and then there's a program that is being run using supervisor to report on the last time passwords were updated on the users for the users on the system. So to me, that would kind of indicate, all right, something to do with passwords. Maybe that's an attack vector there, especially if we need to gain root access. And so the first thing I would do is just run psaux. This will just show all of the running programs on the computer. And you can see here there is supervisor running. And there are some separations with permissions here where if I try to print out this config file, I actually don't think I have access to it. Oh, no, I do. Okay, cool. So I can see that it is running this app PW check program. And if you didn't notice when we looked at the psaux, that is indeed running. So the next step would be to actually go and look and see what that is. So if I try to open it up, you'll see here ELF at the top. So this is a Linux binary. So I can't see it very easily here. And at this point, this would be a good time where we also provide a link to download the file here. And you could download it and open it in a reverse engineering tool like Ghidra. If you open this up in Ghidra, you will be able to go to the view where it will automatically try to reassemble the C code from the binary. And we did not remove any symbols or anything from the binary to make it kind of more accessible for people to work through. And since we are limited on time, I'm actually just going to show you what the original source code looks like and walk through the vulnerability here. So this is the program, and just walking through it, what it looks like is happening is that we have an input file here. This is etc shadow. For those of you that are not aware, this is where all of the hashed passwords on the system are stored. It's stored in etc shadow. And it is being opened in read-only mode. And then we are dropping the root permissions on this binary. So this binary was configured with the suid bit set. So it is able to run as root, even though it is not owned by root. So if I look at PW check again, oh, sorry, it is owned as root. So it's owned as root. And then because I'm the normal user running it, it will immediately drop the permissions. And then if I look further down, this code here is just reading the contents of the file and just pulling out the column that tells you what the last date was that the password was changed.
We have a question. What's the tool's name?
So for reverse engineering the binary, I would suggest using Ghidra. So this is a free tool that comes pre-installed in Kali Linux. You can also download it straight from GitHub. But this is a very, very useful tool, especially if you're a beginner for reverse engineering. Would highly recommend you play around with this. But it's pretty straightforward. All you have to do is just drag and drop the file here, and then just click through and let it process the binary, and then it will actually be able to give you the C like the C kind of what's the word I'm looking for, reassembly of the code. So what is happening in this binary is there's a fork command, which is going to have the parent process run bin upload, and it's going to pipe the contents of the file to bin upload. So then that raises the question, okay, so what is this like bin upload? And this is also right here. I'll stop and take a look at the first two questions here. So the first one is, what sensitive file is being read? That would be etc shadow. And then the auxiliary program being used to upload data, that is user local bin upload. So then if I look at user local bin upload, this is a Python script, and it looks pretty straightforward. Looks like you'll just take the input from standard in, and then it will open a socket to 10 on port 1337, and just it will just send each line of that password file there. Now the contents of the file have already been sanitized, so there's nothing in this data stream which is vulnerable. But the vulnerability is that if we look back at the source code, we open etc shadow. So file descriptor, we open it. We never close the file. And the vulnerability here is that child processes can access the file descriptors of their parent process. So when this fork is run, the upload program here has the ability to read the file descriptors of the parent. And the file descriptor here is basically the reference that's being used to read the open file. And so I actually already wrote the solve script here. And all we need to do is basically replace the contents of that upload program with our own code, which will go and print out the contents of the file, like use the file descriptor to print out the contents of the file. So we have this reseek program where it will take in the file descriptor, it will go to the beginning of the file, and then that just resets the file descriptor here. And then we have our payload here, which is going to then print, like cat out the contents of the file descriptor. So if I run the solve script here, that is the encrypted password for the root account. And then from here, you can go run this in with Hashcat. The password is in the RockU word list. So this isn't supposed to be like a difficult password cracking challenge. The difficulty here was being able to go and get the file descriptor and read from that. So just to walk through what the solve script is doing, we are writing the C program, which is going to reseek the file descriptor, because when the file descriptor is passed to the child, the file descriptor is at the end of the file because it's already been read. The contents have been read so that the pointer is now at the end of the file. So we have to set it back to the beginning. And then I have another program here, which will check the running, it will check the open file descriptors, look for the one that opens up Etsy Shadow, print out the file descriptor number there, and then it will go and reseek the file descriptor and then cat the contents using the file descriptor there. And then the rest of this is just, I make a copy of the original program, then I replace the original program, run the binary for the password check. That will give us the contents of the shadow file, and then put the original program back. So everything still works. This is kind of optional, but that's that was kind of the quick run through of this. Highly recommend if you're not familiar with the file descriptors. There's tons of resources online to explain how those work.
I know there was a lot of detail to that, and we only have a short amount of time. So thanks, Franz, for going through that real quick. I'm going to present another one from individual game. Let me see if I can share my screen here. I'm going to do this window. I have it already set up. We're going to kind of walk through. All right. And there we go. Nostalgia. It's been kind of hard to do some of these image search challenges lately because Google's got so good. So it was really hard to kind of make a lot of these challenges. I know Kiwi had an OSINT challenge for individual game as well, and it kind of made looking up a lot of this information difficult. If you did happen to put it in Google Images, there were kind of two ways you could solve this. And you searched it. I don't need to add anything to my search. I just want to search things. You probably maybe didn't get that much. We got some signs here. So we really kind of had to figure out like what was going on. And that was kind of the point here, so that you didn't just magically get the answer. So what a lot of people started to do, and I'm just going to pull up the image along here because I need to kind of copy it. But you have to put the name, the image keeps disappearing, and kind of search for this. For the Klompen maker, which was what was in the image. Now, magically, it's already, Google has resolved this, and it did kind of figure out a lot of the address for me. But when I was looking through this, it was not very easy to find. In fact, there was one way to find it was a lot of these Flickr photos. So this is one way to kind of verify that this was the place, is there were some albums. And if you clicked through, Eventually there was an image, and we're going to get to it shortly, or not in this flicker.
Jen, I wanted to make sure,
actual,
are you sharing the screen that
oh, am I sharing
results?
the screen? Hold on. Oh, does it make me share the different tab? Dislike. Hold on. There we go. It's not there anymore. It disappeared. Sorry about that, everyone. The Flickr albums keep moving around. But there was a Flickr album in here, and I can try and pull it up, that actually shows you the factory. But this did end up being part of the address. So a lot of people struggled and just submitted this. This is actually the zip code. This is kind of like the city, and Netherlands would have been the country. So you actually needed the street address in order to get this. One of the places, and I have my write-up over here so we can quickly just pop over, was... Hold on, bear with me. There was a PDF that actually showed this factory. Sorry, folks, I thought I had this pulled up. If you Google searched it and maybe went through a couple pages, there was clogs, or if you just wanted to research clog factories in Amsterdam and you scroll down, there was actually a picture of this in here, not this one. These are some cheese farms, very common, maybe that you found while looking through different clog factories. But here's actually the Rotterdam factory, and it gave the full address here. So that's one way of finding the answer. There were lots of ways of finding the answer for this one. I'm going to pop back over to here, and Kiwi, we need you up on stage. Are you ready to present yours? You're going to do crypto from the team game, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
So let me give me 1 second. Let me get this pulled up here.
While you're pulling that up, we did have a couple people, they said they found a postcard of the shop. I did hear a couple people found that. I have not been able to find that. I've actually been looking for that place for a really, really long time because I went there. All right, Kiwi, you ready?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so this individual team game, I wanted to do some hardware-related challenges. If you can't see back there, I have a pretty beefy hardware lab that I get to do fun stuff with. And I wanted to do is this not in 1080p? That is terrible. Well, I don't have the option of changing the quality. Sorry, Eric. One of the things that I wanted to do was actually go through and do a power analysis attack, specifically differential power analysis. I have a write-up of this on my website. Some of you may have found this already. And the fun part is let me find it here. There we go. The fun part is I've already reverted it, but I had a fake key on here. So if you went through and you just read through my blog post without understanding what we're doing here, you would not have gotten the correct answer. And the general idea is that when we're looking at processors that do things, when we're encrypting something using a processor, that requires specific power usage. And depending on whether you're doing it on an FPGA or a microprocessor, there will be different ways of how an encryption is performed. And now when we're looking at AES as an algorithm, we have some very fundamental concepts that we should review, right? So if we do Wikipedia AES, And you're given the traces. You're given an input plain text and output ciphertext. And each line on the traces file corresponds to a plain text input and an output ciphertext. I have a solve script here, and we can sort of walk through. It's still doing some of the math because I wanted it to rerun, but for now, we can walk through, and what we do is we want to take in traces, and we want to start analyzing this, right? The first thing that I do when I have a traces file is that I want to figure out what is the data that I'm looking at and what exactly am I doing here. And you can take a look at the data and you'll see that it's a power trace. You can maybe plot it and you'll see that you have, I think this is 11 different like spikes. Transposing it and tracing it, you get this power model. And for those of you who are unaware, these are 11 different spikes. These are 11 iterations of the same thing happening. Let's see, let's go back to the question. So far we know we have a 128-bit encryption algorithm. If that doesn't pique a yes in your mind right away, that's something to think about. And it's an implementation on an FPGA board. If you go and you do research on what is the difference between, why is it so special that something's implemented on FPGA boards, you'll end up finding out that FPGAs actually reset after each iteration differently from microprocessors. And the important thing to get from there is that FPGA's power models, when we perform power attacks, is based on Hamming distance. That is one of the key points of information that this little blurb tells you. And as you go through, you sort of trace out and you sort of start looking at encryption algorithms. There's 11 different rounds, but if we go back, let's go back to this. We also see that there's this spike right here happens before we see these spikes. And we see these spikes at the end, and we have a weird trend here. Through some OSINT, some research, etc. One thing you'll find out is that for 128-bit keys on AES, you go through 9 rounds. In the middle, you have an initial add round key round, and then you have a final round, which does subbytes, shift rows, and add round key. And so, because it's 128 bits, you want to figure out what thing on here, what phase of the encryption algorithm is being done 11 times. And 1 plus 9, because you have 9 rounds, 1 add round key plus 9 rounds of add round key plus the final round. That's 11 different rounds. Some of you may have jumped the gun and just decided to, do the spike calculation. I'm trying to zoom in for y'all as much as possible. Some of y'all may have jumped the gun here and tried to do like the spike calculation without understanding what exactly you're looking at. And if you did that, you would have gotten some crazy answers. When you get to this graph, it's pretty clear how many spikes you have. And as you look at the other questions, you start realizing, okay, this is AES implemented on an FPGA with add round key. And so the next step is to conduct a preliminary analysis of what exactly do we want to do. Well, we know we want to do Hamming distance, and we know that this is tracing the power consumption on the board as we perform this calculation. And we have 10,000 traces. So we can extract small little correlations from noise that happens by these 10,000 repeated measurements. 10,000 may not seem like a lot, especially for brute forcing a trusted encryption algorithm scheme, but when you're looking at power traces, it's enough. And by analyzing all 10,000 traces, the correlation across those is preserved and random noise cancels out. And the idea here is that there is a difference in the power consumption when we jump from one bit sequence to another. When the key itself actually changes the amount of power we use, and moving, the change from the plain text to the encrypted value as we perform these, and as we perform this encryption, we see the intermediate value changing, and the power used by the board to do that and to find that intermediate value changing. And so I can show you guys the rest of my solve script. It is literally just generating the power model. You will need to conduct a Pearson correlation test. That's necessary even for differential power analysis, because that's how you determine which correct key guess aligns to what power trace. And if you, let's see, is this clear for everyone? Can everyone see this? Yes, Joe, so we will go over the web hard. Is this clear for everyone? This is, I think, once you zoom in a little bit on VS Code, it starts acting weird. Okay. Clear enough. Awesome. Okay, beautiful. So I'm not going to walk through the entire process here because it is a lot. I will be uploading this solve script in the Discord if you want to take a look at it. As you can see, it's still performing the final key calculation process. But what you can see is that, yeah, there we go. What you can see is that down here, when I actually perform the differential power analysis attack, we do get the keys. And it tells us at what time can we determine the best key point. Now, some of these are weird. We will need to run this a couple of times. However, there is a pattern here that is fairly clear as we go through. And even if we're getting a weird answer, at the end, we can determine that this is 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, etc. And I actually believe I do run it again on the positive peaks to finally get the answer. I'm going to upload this script, and I'll probably have some more comments on it as I go through it. Does anyone have any questions? It's hard to walk someone clear but understand is another question. Yeah, it's hard to walk through the entire foundation of differential power analysis. Basically, what I'm doing is I know that because the board uses a different amount of power based on what the key is, I can, through data analysis, figure out what that key is by doing a chosen plaintext attack, because I know what my plaintext is. And the Pearson coefficient extracts the linear correlations across these values, which lets you determine the leaky points in the power trace. Again, I have a full write-up on how exactly this works on my blog post, because otherwise we'd be sitting here for 30 minutes while I nerd out over how side channel attacks work. I will send, the orders of magnitude calculation. Yeah, absolutely. That one is actually fairly simple. Let's see. So you know that a theoretical brute force, yes, I can, let me send that link in first and then I'll walk through that. Differential. Here's that. Okay, I've sent the blog post, which sort of walks you through it all. Is this zoomed in enough? Thanks, Google. You don't zoom in at all. That is wonderful. Okay, so for the orders of magnitude question, what you're really wanting to understand here is what is the theoretical difference in brute forcing between the two? And AES 128 fundamentally has a 2 to the 128 orders of magnitude of needing 2 to the 128 brute force attempts to get it successful. It's not always 2 to the 128 realistically, but when we're looking at the theory, we assume the hardest. We assume that it'll be the highest. And so we want to do log base 10, 2 to the 128. And if we do that minus, let me see if I have the math right in my head, we have 10,000. Because we have 10,000 traces. Whether or not we use all the traces doesn't matter. We still collected 10,000 traces, and that aligns to 10,000 brute force attempts. and we get 34.53. I originally did the rounding wrong when I was typing this in because it was late at night and I did 34. I fixed the answer, but I kept all of the old answers that said 34 correct. And I think this basically corresponds to 38.53. And yeah, so it'll be 38.53 minus 4. And that's theoretically that's the theoretical difference in orders of magnitude. And it all depends on how many brute force attempts does it actually take, but we assume the worst in this scenario.
That was an expedited walkthrough, Kiwi. Bravo. Bravo. Could you maybe share that website as well? Because I think some people were trying to figure out some resources and they were trying to like understand, I guess, how to even like get an understanding of this. And I think what Kiwi's kind of pointing out is that you really have to like research.
You have to do your research and dive into the weeds. I do want to point out a cool solve that I found because I did use a chip whisperer to collect the power traces, but I didn't use their actual like libraries because their libraries are really annoying. But Incredibrick actually went and built a solution using the chip whisperer analyzer module, which props to you. Well done. It's a pain. There are some other really cool solutions. Someone figured out how to cheese this. I think there was a GitHub repo. I'm not going to leak my GitHub. There was a GitHub repo that somebody found. I think I posted it in the Discord as well, where they were able to just pass this in.
Well, we're going to get, we need to move on to the next challenge. So we're going to get Franz up here, and he's going to talk about chords, which was a log challenge from the team game. So we're switching up to the team game, folks, and I appreciate all your questions coming in here. I think Kiwi did put the blog post in there. I'm trying to, there's a lot of chatter, so we really appreciate you all being here. And thanks, Franz, for making that a little bit bigger if you can, so that we can all see that. Still appreciate your questions. And as always, you guys can still continue chatting with us and chatting about these challenges on Discord. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So for chords, this was the hard level log analysis challenge from Team Game. This was an interesting one to make. So effectively, we have a custom log file format that has information about the coordinates of drones as they're kind of on the different flight paths. The big challenge for this one is that we actually did not provide you with the full structure of the data. So you just get the two hints here that all data is saved in big endian, and then each drone data point has GPS coordinates and a timestamp. This is just so that you can kind of limit the scope of what possible and like values might you be seeing in this log file. So the first thing to do, you would download the binary here, chords.bin, and then I would start by going through and trying to do like kind of a byte level analysis of the data. So there's this tool called HexEdit, and I'm going to post that in the chat here. You can upload the log file in here, and you can see that, you know, sure enough, it is in a binary file format. And the one nice thing that I really like about HexEdit is that they have this data inspector, which will make it kind of like it's a quick and easy way for you to check the values of certain parts of the file. So the prompt mentioned that the data is saved in big endian. So if I go over to HexEdit, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here. All right. Hopefully that is big enough. If you go to the data inspector and expand the big endian section, you can see that when you click to the different parts of the file, it will try to calculate, you know, like from where you clicked, what is this as an 8-bit integer and what is this as a 16-bit integer. It's very important that you select the correct endianness for this, because otherwise your results will be completely off. And what I would do is I would just start by looking for patterns and try to guess what these different values are based on the patterns. So starting at the beginning, I can see 0000000B, and then that's followed by more zeros and another 0B. So if I just click at the 00 here, the first 4 bytes, 1, 2, 3, 4, takes us from this 00 to the 0B. as a 4-byte integer, a 32-bit integer, this converts into the number 11. And then, if I look at any other value, it's just too large to be, anything that would make sense. And something to keep in mind with the context clues here is that this is a log file containing like different records. So you might expect at the beginning of the file that like maybe this is a count of how many of something is in the log file. So keep that in mind. There's 11 of something. Next here with the 00, this is also an 11. And then it is immediately followed by this Sky Voyager, which is actually like text, which you can print. Now, typically, a lot of binary formats, if there are variable length fields, the length for that field immediately precedes the field itself. So if we actually count out how many characters are in Sky Voyager, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Hey, that just coincidentally matches up with this the 4-byte integer preceding it, which is 11. So these 4 bytes here seem to indicate the length of the name of the drone. In this case, it's Sky Voyager. And then if we go to the next set of data afterwards, 1, 2, 3, 4. So these 4 bytes, this looks like another number, 168. This actually happens to be how many data points there are for that one drone. And then if I go to the next sequence of characters here, we start kind of like looking at additional kind of like patterns that we might be able to recognize. I'm going to speed up a little bit here just because we are short on time. One thing I will point out is you see this 0001 89 FFEC 1B B840. There's something very similar to that over here. It's almost exactly the same, except these digits are kind of different. Now it's a 2F and a 40. And then over here as well, ends in a 40, and it has, so this looks like some sort of number that's incrementing. So this is actually the timestamp. And I mentioned before that each entry has GPS coordinates. So you have your latitude and longitude. So these characters here, these 8 bytes, that is latitude. And then the next 8 bytes is longitude. So every entry for each drone, you've got the timestamp, latitude, longitude, then timestamp, latitude, longitude, and this just repeats. If you write a script to kind of parse this out and calculate it for you, you can then convert this into a KML file, which you can then plot and graph. So this is kind of the result if you go and do that. There's like a drone out in Alaska. One of the questions was asking which drone is not in the US. There's one in Toronto here. So you can kind of see the path that it took over there. And in terms of calculating the longest path, you kind of just have to go through each one of those coordinates and calculate the distance for each one. So the real challenge in this was trying to be able to kind of parse out the data and then visualize it or do all the calculations using your script. All right. Jen, I think I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly, I know people were asking about Schrodinger's cat. And so I will humor all of you and serve you the humble pie that you have come here to consume. So here we got Schrodinger's cat. Oh, thanks for putting that up there. So real quick, the issue, you may have noticed that you can't ping. Oh no, I wonder why. Sir Eddie made this challenge and he's mentioned his passion for an origin in networking. And so basically there's a firewall that we need to disable. So if we look at IP tables, and this will show us all of the, oopsies, this is a command that's not found. That's because I can't spell. We're going to look at all of the firewall policies right now that are listed, and you'll notice that we can't really go anywhere. Okay, so we're going to change the settings so that we can go somewhere. And if you do some research, get to know more about IP tables and the magical things that you can do with your firewall. So we're just going to right now accept all traffic, incoming, outgoing, forwarding, and I'm getting ahead of myself, and flush the table. And then hopefully now, let's all cross our fingers, we should be able to ping. Huzzah. Magic. Okay, now let's see what is on app 2, guys. So, we're going to find all the ports. And this might take a minute, but we'll definitely see an HTTP port and another port for another service, which is 31003 down here. We know that's open. We don't know what that is. So real quick, let's get with this. Lost my mouse here. Come back. We're going to get this HTTP website. Let's see what's going on there. And huzzah, we found what the name of the service is. So that's the title of the service. See, it says title and service right there. Next, we need, what do we need? Oh, the flag. That's right. The other service, of course, 31003. Okay, so let's keep that in mind, because now we're going to netcat that service for app 2. And we found the Eddy service and we found the flag all with one command. So I'll kind of leave that up there for you guys. This was all of the steps and kind of the quick way to solve it. And I want to give Kiwi some time, because I know everybody's waiting to see some web hard stuff. And I know some people were really upset. So upset that they want the challenge removed. So Kiwi, while you get that set up, just kind of looking at here.
I'm so happy there was a petition. I'm so
I'm sorry I made that look so easy. It was much harder than that. I'm just trying to speed this up for time, because I know we have little of it. Go for it, Kiwi. I want to make sure we can answer some other questions later.
Yeah, so one of the things is that, for NCL team game, we want to make the challenges a lot harder than an individual game, because you have teams of people all working together. And so for team game, I wanted to create a vulnerability and like sort of an interaction that replicated a black box pen test on a website. If you didn't want to deal with a black box pen test on a website, I had a lot of hints available to make that clear as to what was going on. And you sort of pay for those hints by your with your level 1 points, because once you know what the vulnerability is, it becomes really easy. So part of this is, I'm here and I know that I'm testing different things. If the Burp Suite screen is not clear to you guys, there's not much I can do. Burp Suite community doesn't really allow for, what do you call it? Doesn't really allow for zooming, which is sort of unfortunate. But playing around and trying different endpoints. And if you don't want to try different endpoints, if you don't want to see what ends up happening, you have hints to give that you can use. And as you go through and as you sort of introspect on this web app, you will quickly find out that okay, cool, we're at level 1 API user. We can go to level 2. API, pretty sure. We can go to level 2. We can go to level 3, and it's not locked, right? We can jump in between. And so, if you go to API, one of the things that you will receive, if I actually go and let's see, make this bigger. One of the things that we'll sort of like introspect on is that, like, okay, we can make any request we want to this API. We can do whatever we want. We can send whatever we want. And if, we do send that, let's see if we can get a good response here. One of the things that we can try is, like, and obviously you should try this whenever you're pen testing anything. Can I poke at different things that may not exist? And when we try anything.js at the end, we get an Xcache miss response. If you tried something that already existed, it is very likely that you would have gotten an Xcache hit, depending on like what exactly it is that you tried, and that would have still been useful information. There was a reflected XSS potentiality there, like a vulnerability. That being said, there wasn't much there. That wasn't even a red herring. That's sort of a result of how we handle text input. So you could have handed somebody, if somebody did try this, somebody sent a ticket with a Rickroll in there. Thankfully, like, I URL decode before I look at things. But yeah, trying test.js would have given you an Xcache miss, and it would have given you the first flag. And then after that, you sort of know there's a caching response, and that we can sort of deceive the cache. And for those of you that don't know, intrinsically, a cache deception attack is you gaslighting whatever caching methodology on a server and telling it that, hey, this file exists. And it doesn't exist, but you trick the cache into storing whatever sensitive information that you have. And by doing that, if it doesn't exist, you can then get access to sensitive information on the endpoint before. For example, if I had API/account/test.js, test.js doesn't exist, so I would have gotten information about the API/account endpoint, not anything about test.js. And then from here, you sort of try around. And if you go, one of the first things that you should do as soon as you figure out what's going on is Google. And I tried to make this challenge very easy once you figured out the issue or the vulnerability, because the first thing that you'll see is, if you look at cache deception, is a link from Portswigger on how cache deception works. And one of the first things it tells you is, oftentimes CSS and JS files can result in cache rule issues. Also, the name of the challenge is cache rules everything around me, so that was a little bit of a hint there. And if you go through this breakdown, if you go through like this blog post, it walks you through different vulnerabilities that it can exist. And I'll give you guys an example. So level 1 was just a straight like test.js file, nothing big, pretty easy. If you went to level 2 and you tried that, it wouldn't work. You wouldn't get anything. And the reason being is that you'll see, you can read in the Portswigger blog post, or if you just research cache deception attacks, oftentimes there are ways to filter for this, but what people don't do is that they don't filter out smuggling the cache deception attack, the extension in the query parameters. And that's how you get the second one. For the third one, some of you guys got it without even needing to do anything because you already encoded stuff. But the goal with the level 3 is that the cache doesn't do any URL decoding, but our backend does for level 3. And so what you can do is that you can smuggle in an extension that will trigger a cache hit or a cache miss. And then you can smuggle in a URL fragment. And so that looks like that. and you get flag 3. Flag 4 is not the same. Flag 4 doesn't give you anything. And the reason being is that one of the biggest ways that you can perform cache deception attacks is by targeting files stored in the /static directory of website servers, which generally contain static resources. So all you had to do for that one was try any level 4 /static/ and then you could go. I think I still need to do the test.js. Nope, you don't even need to do that. So this is also a path traversal vulnerability. I don't know if anyone caught that. And the reason being, for that one, Animesh, it depends on what you're using. If you use something if you use a tool that automatically URL encodes, it would have given you level 3. If you use something like curl or burp suite without URL encoding, it wouldn't have automatically given you that. At least theoretically, I might have made a mistake in programming the web server. So here we tell it our file is located in static /API/accounts. So we can still access API accounts from the static directory. And if you want to take a look at what that looks like on our end, this is sort of the endpoints that I had set up for this. It was very, very simple. It was very I wanted to make it as easy as possible once you figured out the vulnerability. The thing that made this a hard and not medium challenge was that you had to do a realistic black box attack. We also have a polyglot. I can probably send that in the Discord. I already did send that in the Discord. Courtesy of another member of our team who wanted to make a singular polyglot that would break literally everything. So here's that polyglot. Yes, it is an insane string. But you can replace X with any level here, and you get the cache deception attack successful. Definitely play around with polyglots if you still have access to the challenge. I don't know. I think we do keep the website up. So if you still have the website up, try to make it try to make the smallest possible polyglot that succeeds on all levels. Are these challenges that can be done with just DevTools, or do we have utilized programs such as Burp Suite? These absolutely can be done with DevTools. All I'm doing here is basically going to the network tab and restructuring a request. I personally just prefer using Burp Suite. Burp Suite community is free. It's available for everyone to use. And if you don't want to do this, you can do it in DevTools. It's just a little bit more difficult. Does anyone have any other questions? Yes, Burp Suite has a free version. I didn't know it was pre-installed on Kali Linux. For some reason, whenever I tried to run it on Kali, it does not work. All right, if there's no other questions, then that's about it for cache rules, everything around me.
Thanks, Kiwi. I'm sure everybody is now demystified. I think we can all kind of come back on stage for a second, and I know we have a couple questions that we want to. Some people had just a few that are left over. Someone had a question about the last challenge in network analysis individual game. This was the one with the indicators of compromise. They really want to know, I guess, what was going on. Do we have any way we can have a brief overview of what that was?
Kiwi, are you more familiar with that one?
The network analysis one?
The exfil, the X509 certificate.
No, I'm not really that familiar with it, but we can try to do it together. Do we have time to do it together? We don't have.
We only have a few minutes.
We have a few minutes. I don't know if maybe we could just have a brief overview of
in network individual game. Yeah, I can look at it just really quickly. Give me 1 second. Let me pull it back up. Network traffic analysis, exfil. You're talking about exfil, right, Guy Garrett? I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's the one.
There's a compromise. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
The one where you're given a PCAP NG file account that had 2 logins. Yeah, so for that challenge, when you take a look at it, and I'll just talk through it because we don't have time to fully go through it. At first, it looks like benign TLS traffic, but once you start looking at the X509 certificate subject alt name field, you realize that there's some weird behavior. And subject alternative names, that field allows you to specify multiple different host names for a single SSL certificate. But they're not allowed to contain subdomains. Part of their spec is that they can, but they shouldn't. And so it made these certificates suspicious. There is a way to parse them. I can send the pathway to this. Who is LV the cat? So you can parse it with the following command. And when you analyze the magic bytes of the resulting hex stream, you see that it's xz.xz compressed data. CyberChef doesn't support XZ, so we'll need to use some sort of bash utilities, whether that's in a virtual machine or whether you can get access to it through whatever machine you're using. And this basically gives you the flag. Hopefully that renders properly in the chat.
See, if you join us live, you can get all these commands right here. Okay, awesome.
Do you have any questions about that guy, Garrett? Oh, John Raymond said, how did you learn most of your hardware hacking skills? Any convenient resources to learn that stuff, like Try Hack Me? Well, one of our partners, MITRE, actually runs a hardware embedded CTF. It is the MITRE eCTF. I enjoyed competing in that for several years, and it was probably the biggest reason that I learned a lot of what I learned about embedded security. One of the biggest things that I will say is nice about embedded security is that even with really cheap hardware, you can learn a lot of aspects. Like, yeah, I have a chip whisperer back here and I used it for this challenge, but you don't need that to be successful. You don't need that to conduct some basic side channel attacks. A lot of it is just because I like taking apart hardware and I like playing with it and I like attacking it. So if you really just want to learn hardware hacking, get a tie guard or get a flipper, buy a crappy little router and take it apart. Connect your flipper to it, connect your tie guard to it, and start analyzing it. Start figuring out what are the vulnerabilities that I can find on here. And I guarantee you, you will find vulnerabilities. A lot of router companies do not develop anything to protect their stuff. And that's honestly one of the most common ways that people get into embedded security, which is get a router, try to find a vulnerability, report the CVE, and get a CVE assigned to you. And now you have a CV under your belt that you can put on your resume.
I think we're kind of getting up to the end of time here. I know some people still had some questions about the OSINT problem with the cats in Vegas, and I will definitely say that there's a lot on the Discord about that if you want to learn more about what we're talking about with the cats. So feel free to join us. There's a link in the chat if you aren't already on our Discord. There is a section on our Discord where you can go in, you can look at all of these challenges and kind of get the methods and not necessarily the answers. And so you might get more of those commands like Kiwi's included in the comment section tonight. It is time for us to close out. So sorry, we can't go through everything step by step over video with you guys and answer all your questions live. This is super fun. But we do have some other events this week where you can join us live, and we hope you can join us for those. And just like you registered for this one, register for those. You'll get a sign-up link, and we'll see you there. So bye, everyone. Thanks again. It was a great season. All right.